Lauren Monroe presents Messages from Aphrodite. That's the title of Lauren's new album, a record full of music made for spiritual healing. It's Lauren's third album and her second working with acclaimed producer Jim Scott.
I am just a sparrow. My wings are straight and strong, and I can fly boldly like when you were.
With my first album, the flow was so wonderful, and he was really open to just my creative ideas, and he really got the intention behind my work and why I wanted things certain ways, and he's just a very open producer, and I was able to be creative. And the next album, I just had so much input, and that he was like, we're co-producing this together. You're steering the ship here, and I was really grateful for that. And we came up with a wonderful album that had a lot of sensitivity and grit, but also really emotional, which I wanted.
So when did the germ of the idea for this record begin for you?
While we were recording the last one.
Right.
For it. That's kind of, and that now already, we have our third album. So at least 3 tracks done, and it's just it kind of evolves, because the way I write, I don't really say I'm going to write this kind of album. I just write songs, and they don't really have a specific genre, and then we just look at what I have and go, all right, these go together, and these need to wait, and these, so it's just a constant flow of writing, and then we decide what the core elements will be for an album, and then I start to really work around that. So it's fun. It's fun.
And you got some cool players on the record, so guys like Doug Pettibone and Steve Ferrone. So Greg Lee's on it as well?
Yes, he's wonderful. Greg and his wife, plays bass. They're just beautiful people, and just insanely talented and extremely humble. And the kind of artists that I've been working with, just they show such restraint in talking about their just their successes and their careers. And half the people I've met, I didn't realize who they were and what they did, and after the fact I go, oh my God, I was just with a legend. I didn't even realize it. But thankfully we've all become friends, and Greg and have both performed with me live before, and I look forward to the next time I can play with them.
Yeah. So what were the sessions like? How did they feel? Were they kind of live in the studio, a lot of overdubbing?
Mostly live in the studio. I mean, that's how Jim works. It's all, he runs through the Neve board. There's not a lot of pro tooling. It's really just old school. We go in there, we all record together, and then what we'll do is take about 5 takes. He puts together comps, and then we go, okay, let's try to make that little part better with guitar or bass, or let's see if you can do this better, Lauren, in the chorus, or and then it's done. It's very live, and we all show up ready, and there it is.
Cool. So it starts out with a tune called Gold. What can you tell me about that one? Why is that the lead off track on the album?
Hearts and heads reaching through the phone. Now I'll give you mine, the bravest heart of all.
I love the song. I think it creates a tone of emotionality, emotional connection to the audience. It's a really meaningful song I wrote during COVID, when like a lot of artists did, we all tried to handle what was going on, and we put it in our music or in our art, painting. And that song really speaks about the process people had to go through, saying goodbye to their loved ones who were dying in the hospital, where there was no closure. And, aside from the pandemic, a lot of people have to do that in many ways, say goodbye without closure. And so that song was really a memorial to the people who were left behind, who had to say goodbye to their daughters and sons and grandmothers and parents through an iPhone. or through goodbye, and then they go on a ventilator, and that's it. And it was
Yeah.
just it was really heartbreaking for me to know that was going on, and so I put it into that song.
Uh-huh. All righty. And then you have a video for If You Want. Kind of driving around in a Cadillac, having a good time.
If you want, you can hide right here in the middle of love. If there's a way, you can believe this now.
It was a Ford Mustang. I think it was a 1965 Ford Mustang convertible. I grew up in upstate New York and in Queens, and
Right.
those kind of cars were just all around me. My grandfather passed down his 1965 Chevy Impala.
I had a Chevy
drove
Impala
until
convertible.
the wheels fell off. Did you? Did you?
I did have one.
I remember I could fit 12 friends in that car. It was like the bench seats, the big steering wheels. It was so awesome. So we did the video, and with that Ford Mustang, and I was just the smell of the gasoline,
Right.
Everything. I was just so happy to be doing that and having my music be a part of it. And it was fun. We did it in close to Big Sur on Highway 1, and the scenery was so beautiful. So that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And you got a couple of cover tunes, Can't Let Go and Calling All Angels. How did you choose those guys?
Well, I love the song Can't Let Go by Lucinda Williams, and I always had a vision of doing it a little differently. And when we tried it in rehearsal, we just automatically did it faster and a little more, honky tonk, and it was fun, and we were playing it live. So I thought, let's put it on the record. I've never recorded a cover before.
Told me, baby, one more time, don't make me sit all alone and cry. Well, it's over, I know I can't let go. I'm like a fish out of water, a cat in a tree. You don't even want to talk to me. Well, it's over, I know I can't let go.
Yeah, so that was my first one. And then Calling All Angels by Jane Seabury. She's a wonderful Canadian artist, and I'm a teacher of the healing arts. I work with energy medicine. I work with teaching people how to recover from trauma. And I would use that song a lot in my workshops. I loved it. And it was one of those songs that's like, I wish I wrote this song. I think so many artists feel that. Sometimes they hear a song, I wish I wrote it. I love it so much. And it really helped people. So I just created it in a more Americana way.
Calling all angels, calling all angels, walk me through this wall, don't leave me alone. Calling all angels, calling all angels, we'll try and we'll hold, but we're not sure how.
So it's a special song, and we love performing it.
So your other non-musical ventures that you referred to, how do they obviously they do influence your music. So is it all part of a same thing, or do you kind of compartmentalize things? How do you get through all that?
For years I was compartmentalizing, and now thankfully I'm it's all one thing, and it's it's all kind of integrated because well, first of all, I feel like the world needs this kind of service of music and healing. And so I wrap around a lot of my teaching and storytelling to empower people through my concerts. And we also do a lot of fundraising. Every show we have donated seats for veterans to come. I work with veterans in the resiliency aspect through our foundation, Raven Drum Foundation. We also raise money for suicide prevention at every show. And we talk about it. Some of the songs that I sing, have a direct correlation to those topics. And really, the whole concept of healing from within and looking around the room and seeing how similar we are, try to evoke empathy for one another when there's so much divisiveness in America right now. It's just really, really rife with judging and intolerance. And I feel like we need to evolve, and music can help us do that, to soften our hearts and to just look at each other with more empathy.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, it's the same everywhere. It's in New Zealand. We have similar problems, you
Is
know.
that right?
Yeah, it's strange, but it's just human nature, it seems to be at the moment. I can't explain it, but there you go.
Yeah, I think we're going through a definite transition with humanity. And the way I always explain it in a healing term is that, you know, when you get a wound, before it heals, it looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at. We're looking at all the yuck right now of the human mind and what we can do to really be destructive. But at the same time, there's a lot of good that's coming out. And when we heal, it'll be powerful and it'll be long lasting. And that's where I focus, you know.
It's a good way to look at it. So I imagine when you're doing your live shows, with all this in mind, there's a special kind of connection that you develop with your audience, and you must have some fairly intense conversations with people before, during, and after. Is that what happens?
I do. And you know, people they don't expect it when they come in, but I dive deep, and I always end in a very, you know, it's intense, it's powerful. We look at the shadow parts of ourselves, but I also bring it up so people can really experience things in a really joyful way. And every show, the band and myself and the music really wraps itself around the audience, and we become family, all of us. And I have to tell you, I was fairly shocked when I started touring this year. Every show, I get a handful of people that come up to me and say, I've lost someone to suicide. Every show. And it affects them very deeply. Yep. Obviously, the veterans are affected deeply. There's a lot of tears and healing. And I think it just comes organically when you set the intention and you hold a space for people. And and so it's a beautiful thing that I want to keep doing as long as it's needed.
Yeah, it's a huge problem in New Zealand, believe it or not. You think it's such a beautiful country. Why would that be rife? But it is, obviously. Everywhere.
I think we're broken. You know, humans are broken right now. And my whole thing is really like, there's ways we can save each other.
Right.
That's easy. You know, I tell a story about a guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, and he survived. A seal brought him up from the bottom.
Right.
You know the guy, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he goes around and speaks now about suicide. Right. He tells his story, and the story is, like so many other people, he didn't really want to die. He wanted to be out of pain.
Right.
And while he was on the bus going to the bridge, he said to himself, if somebody just stops and cares about me, I won't do it. And nobody did. Kids in the back of the bus, he was crying, made fun of him. He got off the bus, he was crying. Someone asked to take their picture. So he took these people's picture. You know, we're so disconnected and afraid, I think, to reach out to one another. And then so we jumped. And I always remember that. It's like a smile goes a long way. Someone's crying. It's okay to go, it's going to be okay. Whatever's going on, just take that minute. We don't want to get involved, you know, where everyone's like, I don't want to get involved in that. Yeah. That person might be mentally ill. We have a lot of these defenses that if we just be vulnerable for a minute and reach out to another person, we could change their life.
Yep. So, well, one thing I did notice, just arriving in Nashville, very friendly city. Ooh. People are smiling at each other, and maybe it's because it's Music City or something. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But there you go. One more song, Void of Course. What can you tell me about that? It's something to do with the moon, isn't it?
Don't come back to me. So what you say? Won't you come? Won't you save me? What you play? Won't you come? Won't you save me? Don't come back to me. To me.
It is, yeah. Well, I study astrology, and I'm always really interested in how the planets affect us as human beings and what's going on. And the more I study it, the more I see this like intense correlation of what's going on in the world and the planets. And when I wrote the song, I was looking at patterns of relationship and how people, when they become empowered, how hard it is to like leave certain things in their lives, whether it's a bad job or a bad relationship, or we know we have to go, but we're so used to it. It's familiar. We don't have the power inside. And that song is about being able to leave a relationship. And I looked at the moon. There's a state of the moon called void of course, and it happens a lot. The moon changes its state. And when it's leaving one planet and moving towards another planet, it's void of course, it's void of any connection. Mm-hmm. During that time in astrology, human beings can have a sense of feeling confused or alone or like feeling void of connection. And that's why I called the song Void of Course.
Very good. Very good. All righty. Well, thank you very much for taking time to talk to me. I appreciate it. Hopefully you can come down to New Zealand again. I'd love to see you down there.
Yeah, I would love to play. One of the engineers from my album, Benjamin Knapp, is from New Zealand. He's an amazing engineer. And my last record, I worked with Neil Baldock, who's now producing a lot in New Zealand. You know him?
I believe I do. One thing about New Zealand, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, well, they're wonderful.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. I look forward to coming down.
All righty. Very good. Well, good luck with everything. And thank you again.
Thanks. Take care of yourself.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.